I wasn't even thinking about build to rent 3 or 4 years ago. And a broker friend of mine that owns a brokerage in town, he's like, well, why don't you, build to rent this? And I was like, I hadn't even thought about that. And I ended up doing it myself with one of my business partners I currently work with. And so far it's been great.
Well, this episode has been a long time coming. Welcome, Lou.
Hey, Brad, how are you?
Good. So we have Lou, who's the owner of Olerio Homes in Dallas, Texas. And it's been a minute. We go back quite a ways since the early days of Instagram, back when you're like, I think I need an Instagram account.
Yeah, when we went to the Cambria thing, I didn't really even know what Instagram was. I mean, I know like the girl I was dating at the time was like, why don't you have Instagram? I was like, I don't know.
So just a quick backstory, which Lou alluded to. Man, this goes back. I'm trying to remember what year this was, Lou. This is early on. I just
Probably
started.
17 maybe.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
like 8 years ago. And
Yeah.
Kate Rumson, who was with, she was working as a consultant with Cambria at the time and Real Houses of Instagram. And she brought, yourself and Uday in Vancouver and the Millhaven guys in Utah and Johnny Horahan in Boston. And who else do we have? We had Mike from ECS Homes, Jason Black from Artisan Signature. I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember who I'm missing.
Yeah.
There's a good group of us from all around the country that kind
That
of
was
win.
fun.
And
That was a fun trip. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's still one of the ones I remember. And you and I built a friendship. And I just remember, speaking with Lou, and I'm like, man, this guy has this like enterprise going in Dallas. Like he's so savvy, in construction and building and investing. And, here you are. Like, I guess I need an Instagram because all you guys know each other. And, Lou is the new face in the crowd,
Right. Right.
which is awesome. So
No,
maybe,
we've grown. I mean, we've doubled or tripled in size in the last 7 or 8 years. I think when we met, I was doing, maybe 20 homes a year. We're doing about 60 homes
wow.
between 1.5 million and 4 million, and then we did another 100 doors of build to rent last year, and we're doing our own subdivisions. Um, we're doing we just finished a $60 million build to rent subdivision, and we're doing a $50 million patio home subdivision. That's going to have 26, $2.5 million homes in it, infill, and then working on some other ones. But yeah, it's been busy.
Well, I think the question is going to be a little bit different now as opposed to when you first started. You think about, anyone from that has done development or construction to know the amount of planning and foresight, the feasibility studies, right? Everything that's gone into planning, as you mentioned, a $60 million subdivision, for rent or, even 60 homes, 1.5 to 4 million. What does that capital look like? Are you looking for outside investors? Have you grown slowly by yourself and self-funded these? What does that look like just from, the dollars it takes to have the vision and make these come to reality?
Most of the way we've grown our capital base. I mean, when we started, it was just me and some friends that would put in some money on lots, and now I have an investor network where my investors take down the dirt, and then I get the bank loans and go vertical, and then we have a profit share on the end product. And I use my money on a lot of the deals too, but it doesn't last forever, unfortunately. Uh, I got to get outside capital for the equity, but I get all the debt on my own. It takes about 10 different banking relationships to get to the kind of numbers we're working with, because you tap out pretty quickly after 10, 20 million per relationship.
How have you built those? Maybe we break down this aspect. You mentioned the debt, that you are bringing debt in, as you go vertical. Again, these things don't happen in a vacuum. They don't happen overnight. There's relationships that are built. There's confidence that's built. I mean, any bank, from 2000 that was burned in 2008-9, they're a little, hesitant to maybe loan large sums of money unless they know it's accredited, investor and developer, and someone knows what they're doing. You mentioned you have 10 relationships there, which you do need. How have you built and kind of procured and maintain those over time?
I think it's basically just doing what you say you're going to do. If you borrow money and you pay it back in a timely manner and you abide by their terms and don't jerk them around, they're more likely to either go to bat for you or just keep giving you more money as to whatever their credit department allows. It's kind of like the golden rule, right? If you jerk somebody around, they're going to be less likely to help you going forward. If you do what you say you're going to do, they're going to keep giving you enough leash until you make them regret it.
And how do you balance, again, not getting into all the specifics of how each deal is, because I know a lot of this is proprietary. But based on the profit share, you mentioned that, investors, your group of investors are taking on the land, you're getting debt on the vertical construction. There are carrying costs, there's your development costs or supervision. What does that arrangement look like? How has that maybe evolved over time is a better question between your investors to make sure to some extent it is even that they know, hey, Lou's going to do right because he's going to keep costs down. He has, there is carrying costs to the vertical construction because the reality is you're not building these in 2 months. I mean, they take time to build these
Sure.
structures. So, there are costs that are involved into, the profit margin at the end of the day.
So the way we've kind of done it is the investor put up, like I said, the lot money. We use our capital to carry the interest reserve or the interest carry. Our average turn time is 12 to 15 months. And we just did one this year that was 8 months total turn from when we started to when we closed it on a sale. But that's abnormal. We've tried to get our production time down to about 8, 9 months, but you still have time in permitting, engineering, plan,
Plan
drawing
review.
plans. Yeah. And so the way we do it is we take a 1.5% fee off the sale. So if it's, let's say, $1 million sale, we take a $15,000 fee to cover our overhead, our supervision, management, and then we split the balance 50-50 after all costs are netted out.
That's incredible. I mean, that's a very generous. I mean, from your side, only 1.5%. I mean, that's a very cost effective, which means you have to be operating at scale with, the staff you have either at the back end office or in the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're running right now with about 7 or 8 project managers. We have about 20 staff that does from accounting to warranty to punch. We do all our punch, we do a lot of our punch work on in-house. And then, everything else is sub out. All our trades are subbed out. But we have a, interior designer, purchasing department, starts coordinator, accounting, everything, area manager.
So I do want to break apart that structure a little bit in here in a minute, but as far as staying on the development side, are you pre-selling any of these projects, or is it kind of the game plan to wait till it's turnkey ready? Because we know that the dollars can change, and involving a client early also changes your operation and build time.
It does. Honestly, selling early is not my favorite. I know, there's a lot of guys that don't mind doing all the change orders, and what I've found is if you net out how much you're making on the change orders and the amount of time lapse with interest carry, I found you're better off just selling the thing when it's done or close to done and turning that velocity to another project versus say, all right, I'm going to sit on this thing for a year and a half or 2 years with this customer who bought it, and they're going to do $300,000 worth of changes and yada yada. By the time you lapse out that 2 years and you pay all the interest carry on it, you could have done like another half a project or 3/4 of a project that you've been messing with this one customer. I mean, if I do it, I make sure it's worth my while and the numbers are big enough. Otherwise, I'm better off just selling it, within 30, 60 days of closing, where they're just picking out final, maybe some fixtures, some plumbing stuff, some colors or a stain color here and there, but not starting at the beginning where they're, soup to nuts, every, minute decision.
And the reality is, I mean, to your point, Lou, when you bring in a client midstream, early on, pre-sale, that build time changes, which changes the outlook. It changes the management. It changes the staff you have to have. It changes, just a lot of, call it, not, I mean, you have very efficient systems, but it changes the systems you have, to be able to communicate and properly manage that client.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was building a personal house for myself, and a friend of mine's, ex-wife came along and wanted to buy it, and the number was big enough that I said that's fine, but it probably took an extra 6 to 8 months. It's still not done. Like all the floors were imported limestone, and that just everything just gets delayed. All the landscaping planning and this and that, every decision, instead of me just throwing 4 or 5 colors at it, every wall now is a specialty finish, and it just takes everything twice as long as it would if we just had it on our normal program. So you got to account for that interest carry, the property taxes, the insurance, like the cost of capital, all that adds into it. And that's why I'm happier just saying, hey, I'll sell it and at the end, or sell it near the end when there's just a few little things left to pick.
Yeah, and I think most people listening, I mean, who are looking at this maybe abstractly, if you will, just from a numbers basis or maybe a management side, on paper, it's like, yeah, it's a no brainer. Why would you ever pre-sell? You always wait till the end because, as Lou, you've explained, I mean, you're bringing in potential inefficiencies by pre-selling the project. However, for this to be real beneficial, two things have to happen. I mean, you alluded to this with your banking relationships, is that you have to have, a track record for your investors that, by them waiting, they're putting up the land. There's going to be 12 months probably till we sell this. And there has to be a few things. One, you have to have great designs because now you're doing the designs yourself. So designs, cost, all these things, because you don't know what the market's going to be in 12 months. And so I don't want to say the safety net, but the reality is you have to have efficiencies in place the way you're operating to minimize that risk as much as possible so that if the economy does change or interest rates do change, that there's flexibility to know that you're not upside down in each of these developments when it comes time to sell them.
No, that's for sure. I mean, I'm doing a subdivision right now that's going to have 26 patio homes around $2 million. And I haven't even put a billboard up or anything. And I'm getting people that want to reserve lots in there. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. And those I will pre-sell those because I'm offering a finite, you're only gonna be able to choose like 2 or 3 different bricks on the exterior. They're going to have very specific design packages where you can say, pick 1, 2, or 3, and that's it. I mean, there's not going to be a bunch of deviations when you're doing a $4 or $5 million house and there's a million different choices.
Right.
So I think that's the difference. I think if you're building a certain price product, yeah, obviously you want to take some of that risk off the table. During COVID, we did a bunch of it. We pre-sold a bunch of stuff, and it was a bumpy ride because people had rate locks. We couldn't get appliances. We couldn't get this. We couldn't get that. And it pushed out our lead times, which was not fun dealing with these buyers. But we didn't have another option. Yeah, but you're right. Sometimes it does take out some of the risk. It just depends on the project. It depends on the customer. We do some contract builds on our higher end stuff where the buyer brings the dirt and we just build them a house on cost plus basis. But that's not the bulk of our business. We do a handful of them, but that's not how we make the majority of our income.
So if you don't mind me asking, when you have a unique client like that wants to do a cost plus or maybe unique build, what's the incentive or why even take that on, especially when, as you alluded to, all these unique projects you have going on, these developments, what's the incentive to, add another arm, to the complexity?
Well, some of them, I mean, we just finished a $7 million custom in Dallas in Highland Park area. And, it's nice to have that cash flow because, we're just billing it out monthly and there's no risk. There's no downside. It's just, we got a few of them and it's just helps pay the overhead for the, monthly rent and office staff. And, because obviously when we have a spec, we don't get paid on it for 12 to 15 months. So you'd
Right.
like to have some income coming in the meantime, but that's one of the, and it's usually somebody I've built for in the past or I know, and so I'll do it. But yeah, it's not how we make the bulk of our income.
Well, when you're running a highly effective operation as you are, Lou, you mentioned design, you have in-house design. I would imagine you're speccing out your own finishes for a lot of, the projects you're going to sell. You mentioned that you had the patio homes where you may do some pre-sales and they're going to give option A, B, C. What does that design center look like? And does that design center have a role in the cost plus builds you're doing as well to kind of keep it in one place?
We don't have a design center yet. We use local showrooms. I am going to build a new office in Fort Worth because we're acquiring a builder in Tarrant County that's already existing. We're going to keep that brand the same, and they're going to be our sub $1.5 million product. So we will probably have a design center there for those customers. Most of the people that we work with in the Dallas area, we have pictures of all the products that we're pushing them to put in one of these houses. So we can say, kind of, we've used this stuff in the past. These are the wallpapers we've used. These are the plumbing lines we've used, tiles, whatever. And we can usually push them into a decision, because the people that are buying the 1.5 to 2.5, 3 million, usually those buyers, they know what they want. And, you just show them stuff they've seen in other ones of my houses, and they'll kind of go that direction. When you start getting into that much higher price point, that's when they want to reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do.
They want stuff that you build multi-million-dollar homes
yeah.
for, athletes and whoever. And, they want stuff that no spec builder's doing, unless they're, a lot more aggressive than I am.
They want it customized, for them or for their, for their taste.
Right.
What do you feel is your biggest pain point? You mentioned that you have quite a few. I mean, you actually have more than I thought you may have, from an area manager, project managers, a staffing side. Biggest pain point, internally with the team, and all the product you have out in the market right now.
It's been, the last year, 2 years have been pretty smooth. Once we got past COVID, it's been our Dallas permitting time has gotten down to like 2 weeks, which is, great.
It's incredible.
COVID, we were at like 6 months. Dallas used to be like 48 hours, and I had a gold card. If you did so many starts, you had a gold card, and they had to permit you in 48 hours, as long as you had your package together with your engineering and all that stuff. And then during COVID, it just got ridiculous. And now it's back to like a 1 or 2 weeks. It's fine. Our production time, 7, 8, 9 months. And, obviously interest rates, our carry has gone up significantly, and we were carrying at 4% versus 8 or 9%.
Mm-hmm.
23 was kind of a rough year just because our sales slumped. But 24 was great. I think 25 will be great. If we could get 30-year rates back into the high 5s, 6%, I think you're going to see another huge boom. And I think that boom could last for a long time, because the United States has been in a net negative housing supply since 2008, 2009, and we've never caught up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like during COVID, that's kind of why we moved into some build-to-rent product, is because I saw the writing on the wall that if rates start going up dramatically, there's going to be a lot of people priced out of the market. Dallas has gotten so expensive. Home pricing in Dallas since COVID has more than doubled. Houses I was selling in 2019, 2020 for 900 are now, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, 2 million. So you've seen just massive inflation on the sales side, but you're also seeing it on the lot side. What I was paying for lots 5, 6 years ago is more than double what I'm paying now.
What?
I don't know if you've seen that same inflation in Arizona.
Oh yeah, but here's what's interesting about the Texas market. Again, I've never built in Texas. I'm not overly familiar. It's just contacts I have, such as yourself, Lou. A lot of builders build out that way. What's unique about Texas, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you look at the housing crisis that happened in 2007, 8, 9, you look at California, you look at Vegas, you look at Arizona, Florida. These are markets that, again, they come in. Investors heavily infiltrate these markets.
Boom and bust, yeah.
Yeah, they boom and then they bust. The recession hit and these places were decimated. Phoenix was decimated and really didn't start moving until 2014, 15, 16. It took a long ways to get out of that. We didn't see that in Texas, right? If I'm not mistaken, you didn't see these huge crashes,
Yeah, I started building in 07, so I saw the worst of it. But yeah, it was just like a 2-year. It wasn't fun. but I didn't have a bunch of skin in the game either. But it was a 2-year. It was soft, and then by 09, it was still soft. 10 started to take off, and we made a lot of money between 2010, 2013, where we were buying dirt relatively inexpensive, and there was still a big appetite to exit when they got them done. We never really sat on inventory.
Now, my question would be, though, you mentioned now, though, it's changed a little bit. You're seeing pricing change, lands change. I'd imagine there's a lot of people moving in. I'm sure you have, like we have, a lot from California and other states moving into Texas. We've seen a lot of growth in Texas. Not that you have pause for concern, but now that, why do you feel that Texas is now in a market where pricing is changing, that it's becoming more expensive? Part of that could just be inflation itself.
Well, I mean, we haven't seen as many Californians as we have in the past. I mean, there was a while where I was selling a lot of reloads, and we don't seem to be anymore. And I don't know if that's they just they went to Austin, or I know there's a huge move coming from Goldman Sachs that hasn't started yet. I mean, you might see more after this fire, in California. I mean, a lot of those people aren't going to be able to afford to rebuild, and maybe they will relocate. I don't know. But I think a lot of it where I build in Dallas, I don't build in the suburbs. I build in the inner loop, south of 635, and there's just a finite amount of homes. There's no vacant land, so basically, for me to build something, I got to tear something down. So most of my stuff in Dallas is all infill. In Fort Worth, it's in subdivisions. But if I'm making a little infill subdivision, something was torn down. These infill subdivisions are very hard to come by. There's not, it's like a needle in a haystack even to find the land to do it. So I think it's just become scarcity of resources, scarcity of land, and that's what's caused, a lot of the inflation.
And I do want to bring up this point, Lou, because the most successful developers and investors I know, again, they have a core strategy, right? You mentioned that you're building within the inner loop, and so there's a core strategy there. But again, there's a skill set to understand, one, to not only envision, you know, um, infill property of what it could be, what you can build it to be, but also, working through easements, working through, any zoning issues that may be in the city, demolition is part of it, so working through existing structures. I mean, there's a lot of coordination and foresight that go into these developments.
Oh, these are multi-year projects. I mean, the one I'm talking about that we're getting ready to go vertical on, I think we bought the land over 3 years ago. We had to get it entitled. We had to go through city permitting, engineering, which took almost a year. Had to put in all the infrastructure, the streets, the utilities. Working with the local politician. The neighborhood that went, really wasn't thrilled with this. They wanted the tract. They wanted the tract to stay vacant, and that's really not an option. So. I mean, but yeah, these are not projects that pop up overnight.
How do you have these conversations with your investors, knowing that, hey, this may be a long-term investment because we have the entitlements and zoning that we have to work through?
This project, I'm pretty much the investor on, with one of my buddies, and he's he doesn't care. He knows kind of the game. The rest of them on the large projects, I kind of pair with guys that are already in the space, that are large scale developers, and they put some equity with me, and they know what to expect. Um, the smaller investors, I just put in single, homes where it's foreseeable what the lead time is going to be. The lots are ready to go. We just put a plan. Most of the time, we have a plan we've built before that we can put on the lot and be ready to go, in 60 days.
So, when you mentioned you're doing that, $60 million subdivision, maybe the infill lot, are you doing any of the horizontal construction, the development side, or are you
We're subbing it
subcontracting?
out. Yeah, we're subbing it out.
Yeah. So I mean, again, this goes back to the expertise that you're going to work through the subcontracting of. It can be complicated, as you know. I mean, the horizontal side is almost a whole different business model than the vertical construction.
It is. The difference is, I got the guy that works for me. He's in his 70s and he's done it for years, so he's pretty good at it. The difference is on the horizontal side versus the vertical side. I mean, how many subs touch a job? 50 on the vertical side.
Yeah, or more. Yeah, 50 or more.
On the horizontal side, you're only messing with like 5 or 6 people.
Right.
You're missing with the utility contractor, an excavator, paving contractor,
Hmm.
a civil engineer. It's a pretty small group. It's a lot more to easily manage if you know what you're doing than dealing with a framer, to a plumber, to people that clean the inside. It goes on and on. Our file on a house after we build it of invoices is that thick.
There is a large contrast, and I've been fortunate to do some horizontal development, in my years. And, there's, it's very technical. And what I mean by that is I've seen, call it low barrier to entry. If you're going to go build a house to some extent, you may have, I'm sure you've dealt with this, there's clients that are like, hey, I might do an owner build. Now, anyone that's built, you understand the risk, the liability. You may not have top tier subs, not just from the scheduling, but what are you even looking at, from WRB and waterproof? I mean, there's so many variables, right? But, at principle, there are experts you could hire that could counsel you through. Horizontal development is totally different. Understanding, when you're having to shut down intersections and deceleration lanes and
Right.
maybe bus stops and there's
Yeah.
public transit moving on a daily basis and you have to have road closures. I mean, again, when you're digging down sometimes 30 feet to put these sewer lines in, it is a whole different monstrosity of technical construction in a lot of ways. And you can really burn yourself if you're not doing the horizontal right, because it impacts the cost of each, lot price.
No, I learned, 7 or 8 years ago, I did a small subdivision with 25 lots, and I had somebody feed develop it for me. And when I started building, I ran into all the stuff he didn't do. So I realized it was cheaper because I didn't know what I didn't know, and so it's a lot cheaper for me long term now to have somebody on staff who knows what he's doing, and we just handle it ourselves.
It's really interesting. One thing I want to pick your brain on, because what's unique to the Texas style is you guys do a lot of brick, right? A lot of
We
stone.
do.
And I'm always fascinated how your build costs can be, call it as inexpensive as you can with the amount of facade, details you put on. Because I look at what I pay for brick and stone. I have no idea how you guys do that much in Texas.
So we pay for brick right now. You can get paint grade brick for probably $350 per thousand on the brick. And I think we're paying 450 or $500 per thousand laid.
That's wild.
But stucco in Arizona is probably cheaper. I think we're paying $8 a foot for stucco over OSB.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know what is it.
It just depends. I mean, the problem with mine, I mean, again, my business model is so much different because, we're doing custom. And so every project's so unique that we see these wide ranges, as we look at square foot costs, whether it be stucco, concrete. I mean, there's just so many variables, especially on the hillside. It depends how much scaffolding they have to put up, how long they have to keep it up, and that impacts the square foot price. So there's a few factors that kind of move that needle. But, at principle, we definitely are cheaper because it's one of those things where the more you do it, of course, you're going to have more trades, to occupy it. When, for
But
you, Lou,
are you going over CMU more with the stucco or going over OSB or zip?
yeah, it's a good question. Again, I would say we're probably 70% wood framing still out here in
Okay.
Arizona, at least for my builds. I know a lot of builders are probably 100%, but 30% are ICF, insulated concrete form or masonry.
Yeah, you don't really see that here. You see stucco, I'd say in Dallas is probably 90% over OSB and then maybe 10% over CMU.
And are you doing any CMU or ICF construction on any
Uh, I'm
development?
I'm not. I mean, you got to get into like the 5 million plus.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if I was doing a stucco home for myself, I would do the CMU just because I'd be pretty anal about the cracking.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you don't have in California is the weather changes we have here.
Right.
And in the winter, I mean, this morning it was 25 degrees when I left my house. So and then it might be 70 next week. So you get, moisture and rain, it gets in those cracks, freezes, starts to open up. So, I try to limit the amount of stucco I use just for the long-term liability and warranty issues. Even though we do use the mesh, we do 2x6 walls when we're doing stucco. We do piers most of the time when we're doing stucco. It still can create headaches for us.
Now, you mentioned you do in-house design. Are you doing in-house architecture as well?
No, I got a guy that I've been working with for about 15 years. He and I work, I just was at his office. We meet once or twice a week at his office. I come up with most of the ideas, and we just, go back and forth. And we just kind of, a lot of the stuff we have the same plans because we buy a lot of the lots in Dallas are the same size, 50, 60, 70s. So we have a bunch of floor plans. We keep changing elevations, stick with plans that work, and don't reinvent the wheel. Just keep going.
So you mentioned that, again, this is just very interesting to me, Lou, that so many of this is coming out of, that brain trust that you have. Where are you getting your ideas as you're coming to, your architect that's not in-house to give the ideas of, what you're thinking for the next development?
I'll kind of get an idea just looking online, and I kind of get a different idea of a theme because let me see if I have a picture. So these patio ones, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. I wanted to do like a European theme,
Hmm.
So we're doing, these are going to be like the patio homes.
Wow.
Um, and we're going to offer like a few different brick choices, and they're going to be kind of European themed, all with elevators. Um, and you're only going to be able to choose a few different finishes, exterior finishes, so it's all going to look pretty consistent.
Uniform.
I don't
Hmm.
want like, yeah, uniform, right? Um, and I kind of came up with a theme for the exterior, and then we kind of just started playing with it and modeling it and repeating it. And so now we're going to have, five or six different elevations, five or six different floor plans, master up, master down. They all have elevators, little yards. So, and that's kind of the way, we do it.
What, for those who may not understand what a patio home is, walk through kind of the what that is, and
I mean, these are bigger. Yeah, these are bigger than, I mean, these are going to be 3 to 3,800 square feet. So they're not tiny. But they're on 5 foot setbacks on the sides.
Mhm.
No yard for a pool. The subdivision will have a couple of green belts. You can take your dogs for walk, and it'll be gated with an 8 foot brick wall. But it won't. There will be no pool. Our target demo for this is like the 55 plus community. So most of them in Dallas that can afford this product, they have house somewhere else, or they travel and go to the beach or Colorado, and this will be kind of like a lock and leave lifestyle for them.
Yeah, I figured that was going to be the demographic only because you mentioned the elevators are going to be a standard. So typically you
Yeah,
wouldn't see that unless it's, a generation that's aging in place. And, that lock and leave's important. You mentioned there's no pools right in the development.
no,
So that's not
no.
a heavily requested item. So really this is something that where they're going to be parts of the year when the weather's nice. And, but again, they have that safety and convenience of having the elevators age in
I mean,
place.
a lot of them are members of country clubs, and if they're going to go swimming, they can go somewhere else. It's just there was no real good. There was no real
Yeah.
good place to put it without giving up a couple lots, and then you're talking about giving up a bunch of profit, right? So, I mean, it's all a give and take.
So
Because then I
since
would have had
these,
to mark up those other lots, and then it drives up their HOA, and then they're like, well, I don't want to pay. Right now, this HOA is going to be very low. It's an electric gate on three sides, and there's going to be, lawn maintenance. So it's going to be very, probably a couple $100 a month. You start putting in a pool, all this other
Mhm.
stuff, then people are like, I don't want to pay $600-700 a month for an HOA.
I'm glad you brought this up because I think most people, as they get into development, they don't realize that you're creating the CCNRs, right? You're essentially creating the
Right.
HOA that's going to manage it. And, to that point, Lou, if you're putting in all these amenities, yeah, on one angle, you can attract maybe a different buyer, but you have to really understand who the demographic is you're selling to because, to put stuff in just to put it in and increase the HOA, it, to your point, it's like, if you can lower the cost of that HOA where it's just probably paving every 5 or 10 years of the streets, you're going to have, maintenance of the green belt and the yards. I mean, this is ideal for the client that's going to come in and doesn't probably need those extra, perks.
Yeah, no, I agree. We decided to put an elevator in each unit. We're also doing some models that have two masters, one up and one down. So if the husband snores and the wife, at that age, a lot of times they don't sleep in the same room anyway. They can each have their own master, and they can visit each other at the breakfast table.
And again, I mean, I would imagine that how you've set this project up, these are not for rent. These are for sale, which means
No,
at some point, that's why you're turning over you yourself. I would imagine you're contacting an HOA to come in and work with you for the CCNRs and manage the subdivision after you guys are long gone.
our attorney will do the CCNRs, but yeah, we'll turn it over to some HOA management company, and they'll take it over.
What about you mentioned you do a lot of build to rent and you saw that coming. What does that product look like?
So we have two subdivisions that do that. One is called East Love, and that is a infill. I bought 64 duplex units maybe 4 or 5 years ago that had a low income housing restriction on them, and that ran out a year after I bought it. And they were low income housing built in the 40s and 50s. They were very run down. I mean, not even couldn't even. They were like 2 bedroom, 1 bath, 800 square foot duplexes per side. They were well past their expected life or useful life. They could not be remodeled. So it was a whole block from one, solid block on two sides of a street. And we went in there, we mowed down, all of them, went back up with brand new duplexes, all foam insulation, all cabinets to the ceiling in the kitchen, all stainless steel appliances. They have come with washer and dryer. There's no carpet. They're all LVP. All
Mm-hmm.
the floors all LVP. The stairs are wood, very low maintenance, all brick exterior, and we rent those for about $4,500 per month per side. The backyards are all turf. They have all cameras, electric gates. So basically, all we do is mow the front yards and take care of the front yards, and then all the homeowner has to, or the renter has to do is, wash the turf down in the back with the garden hose if they have an animal. Otherwise, it's same thing, lock and leave. They don't have to really know maintenance.
Now, but there is an aspect to that as you continue to develop that product. I mean, the property maintenance side, is this something that you're subcontracting out or are you guys managing in house?
You mean like no, we have maintenance people on staff and we have property management on staff. We do our own in-house leasing, and we have a property manager who manages the property. And then we just got a landscape company that, every 2 weeks or week, whatever the schedule is, depending on the time of year, that mows and takes care of the plants in the front. Sides are gravel, and then the backyard's all turf. So, we don't even have to get into the backyard. We just got to maintain the front.
Yeah,
And
and
we got
that's
a
where
full-time maintenance man.
yeah, and that's where I was going because the leasing, right? As people come in, I mean, that's something that's a continual need for, it's not like you just lease them out and you're done, right? There's turnover, people move out, and so that ongoing management. It sounds like you're doing that all in house as well.
Yeah, we have a full-time maintenance guy who, will do the make readies when people start moving out. We have a model that has a leasing office, furnished model. So yeah, I mean, we've kind of thought through this. It's something I intend to hold, hopefully never sell, because it's a very close-in area of town, right near Love Field, right near Highland Park. That I think rents in the next 24 months will start getting over $5,000 a month on 64 doors, and there'll be an asset that I'll hopefully never have to sell, and we'll just keep clipping a coupon and eventually put it on long-term debt.
So when do you sleep?
Well, I don't have, unlike you, I don't have multiple kids and a wife, so I just have to worry about taking care of myself and dealing with this business.
It's a
I
lot.
mean, I'm 47. In the next 8 to 10 years, I'd like to pull back on the construction side and then just do a lot of horizontal and land development and just a lot less day to day and a lot fewer moving pieces.
I mean, your growth is
Easier to plan
incredible.
out.
Yeah, but your growth is incredible. I mean, I look at just again, I mean, this was just 8 years ago, what you were doing to what you're doing now. I mean, Lou, it's been incredible. I think anyone listening, it's pretty rare to meet someone that's been able to build a business to this level. Any, knowing what you know now, any wisdom that you could impart to the listener about how you were able to scale and have now a diversity of product, from patio homes, build to rent, and still the custom homes that you're as well as, the build to suits.
I think it's all like, always trying to meet different people and learn from them. I wasn't even thinking about build to rent 3 or 4 years ago or 5 years ago. And a broker friend of mine that owns a brokerage in town, he's like, well, why don't you, build to rent this? And I was like, I hadn't even thought about that, and connected me with some private equity guys. And, they work with Invitation Homes, which is the largest aggregator in the country. They own 45,000 units across the country of single family homes. And I, went through their specs and with this private equity specs. And then I realized, well, we could probably do it a lot cheaper just with one of my equity partners I don't know. I mean, I already know, versus the private equity had a lot of hoops to jump through.
Mm-hmm.
The agreements were very tight, and it wasn't something I wanted to get in bed with. And I ended up doing it myself with one of my business partners I currently work with, and so far it's been great. And I think it's definitely not as, the infill ones are lucrative. I think if you go out in the suburbs and you just build tract homes to rent, I don't know that there's as much upside there, because then you're just kind of, the float between what it costs you to build and the rent you're getting in the suburbs are not nearly, you're not getting $2 a foot. And I just don't, it's more of a commodity where it doesn't have as much upside to me as finding an infill product and doing it. That's where you like, and the infill, and I was explaining this to one of my friends the other day, is if you're building out in the suburbs, if Brad and I are in the same subdivision, I'm buying the lots at the same price you are. The
Mm-hmm.
reason we're able to make such better margins in infill is because I'm able to find that dirt. That's where my profit is, what I can buy that dirt at, because I'm buying it at a different price than my competitor, and that's where I'm picking up my extra margin versus just buying out in the in a suburb and just taking down lot inventory. I mean, our margins will get into the 30s on infill. We'll never hit those margins on in a subdivision.
And it's a good point because again, that risk, I mean, you mentioned, especially if you're buying, call it pre-developed, lots. I mean, everyone's buying from the same, from the same price point across the board, in these mass developments, and the developer is the one who's making the margin on the dirt pending, they did their horizontals correctly and they have, all the pads built right and, did their homework there. But to your point, there's only so much you can make in going vertical as opposed to finding the deal, doing the entitlements, doing the zoning. I mean, there's so much risk involved. There's so much time, and a lot of people don't have the appetite for that.
No, that's where the upside is. I mean, there's a lot of guys in Dallas that they just self-develop, not because they're going to make a huge spread on the dirt, because scarcity of lots. So
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, you buy this dirt, I'm going to self-develop it. I'll be in at 400,000 a lot. There might not be a bunch of margin in the lots, but I just picked up 20 lots to build it. I'll make my margin on the vertical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this goes back to knowing your business model. And I'm sure I may know the answer to this before I ask, but what is holding you up? You have connections to private equity. You have, maybe VC funds that are out there. Anyone that has done development and been very successful. You mentioned you have a 60-door infill property, that's at a good part of town that gets good rent. What's holding you back from maybe selling that? Because you could get a great cap rate on that, to a national REIT. So what is holding you back from selling
Yeah,
it to a national REIT?
no, nothing. I mean, I think, obviously the caps are high now because of interest rates. So, if I was going to do something, you'd wait till the caps were under 5.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, I think then I got to place that money somewhere where, it's a long-term asset that I'm very secure with the neighborhood. I only see rents going one way. I don't mind, holding it and clipping a coupon every month. It should generate, 3.5+ million in gross rents per annum. That will just keep going up. Like to retire sometime.
You mentioned that. I mean, hopefully in the years, next 8 years, you'll be on some yacht somewhere, Lewis. We're having,
Well,
podcasts
I
too
don't know
with you.
about that. I don't know that. I don't know that I could ever. I don't know that I could ever do nothing. I really. I'm fortunate that I love what I do, and I found something that I'm passionate about and I'm good at. Because I don't really see. I mean, obviously, in the building business, there's days you want to choke somebody. And I've had kind of a short fuse just because I've been doing this so long that your patience run out. And I've had guys work for me and they're like, why are you such an asshole? And I said, you do this for 20 years, you tell me if you're not an asshole. And after working a few years, they're like, I get it. It's customers wear you down, subs wear you down, and it just you got to have a lot of patience. Where I've learned from investing in multiple other asset classes in real estate, whether it be raw land, commercial pads, multifamily, there's a lot less headaches in developing that kind of stuff and owning it versus managing residential construction day to day, single family homes. I mean, that it is definitely the most stressful asset to manage on a day to day basis by far.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
the homeowners are the most invested in that product. People in apartments, they don't really care. Like there's, land, you're just chopping it. You're working with a civil engineer and a planner, chopping it up, selling it off to end users. Credit tenants, you put them in a warehouse or in a single, tenant building. Once you lease it, they're on triple net. You're really not going to hear from them.
Mm-hmm.
But single family high end residential is definitely the neediest, pickiest, most demanding client. I mean, you would know because you're building at a level that I'm not even building at on the single family side.
Yeah. Regardless, I mean, And to your point, it really doesn't change. I think most builders would agree. If you're an entry level remodeler that's doing 15 to
That's even
45,
worse.
yeah, 15 to $45,000 projects. I mean, a lot of times your customer base, I mean, this is a major deal for them to spend this kind of money on a remodel, or they're getting a lot, um, a HELOC, on their project. And so this is very personal. But to your point, someone's spending 2, 3 million, this is the same 15. The reality is there's an emotional part because of the dollars at stake, as opposed to the rental side where, yes, they want it to operate, they want it to function, they want you to communicate, but this is not, personal dollars in a way that they're investing in, their personal product.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I worked for Merrill Lynch for 6 years out of college, and then I taught myself how to flip houses and remodel, and I did remodeling for several years. And you want to talk about a bad mood? They'll put you in a permanent bad mood. I mean, the margins are not good. You're dealing with people who are trying to live in the house most of the
Yes,
time.
right.
It's really hard to forecast exact costs because you don't know what you're going to get into when you start opening things up, especially on like older homes in Dallas. And you're working with people that the budget isn't that flexible. You can't put an extra 50 or 100,000 and say, oh, sorry. Yeah, it's not fun. It's I mean I That's in '07, '08. That's when I was like, you know what I got to do? I got to build new construction because this remodeling's for the birds.
Well, I love how quick you pivot and realize that, Lou. How do you market your developments? When you have some of these special projects coming on, marketing can be a big component, a big cost component of the development. How do you kind of work around or at least plan for those costs?
We do a separate website. We market it on our Instagram. We do a separate Instagram page for the subdivision. We have a local blogger who's very tied into the realtor community. We pay them for advertorial. We do press releases, realtor opens, a lot of social media. That's sponsored ads on social media. Network through local brokerages. That's some of it.
Do you see buyer preferences changing, whether it be options or features they're requiring?
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed on our single family that for years, I don't know how it is in Arizona, but for years in Dallas, the appetite for white painted brick houses were insatiable. And I've got ripped on for years by realtors telling me I build white boxes, and I was like, when they stop selling is when I'll stop building them. And the last few years, even I've gotten tired of building them. And I've started going, seriously, I have. I'm like, I can't build anymore. Like, because I built so many in one neighborhood.
Right.
And like, I got to do something because they can't all be the same. And so I've started going to like really high end bricks and different textures, and those are selling great now too. So I'm still doing some painted brick, but we're putting in a lot more non-painted, like queen size brick, and with different mortars, buff mortars and white mortars. And we've gone to inside. Everybody wanted white kitchens with Carrara marble and quartz and this and that. And now we've gone to doing a lot of white oak stain cabinets with different islands, different shaped islands, different shaped hoods. More earth tone finishes, getting away from the white marble, going into the Taj Mahals and the more neutrals, more earth tones. Like that's the way I see everything pivoting right now, getting away from the white and grays and pivoting more to earth tones, softer tones, greens, neutrals. I mean, that's what we've seen here. I don't know if Arizona's the same.
Oh, very similar. I mean, especially as in regard to design. I mean, these trends follow Texas, Arizona. I mean, it's nationwide. I want to say, I believe you and I mean, this is years ago. And again, you showed, for those that are watching this on YouTube or, eventually will, you show some incredible renderings with that European flair for these patio homes. I mean, they're gorgeous. You wouldn't look at that and think, this is a patio home with an elevator. But I remember a comment you made that you didn't have enough windows, right? And they were saying you're building these caves, and you're like, they're selling.
Oh yeah,
so.
yeah. My architect used to call me the dungeon master, and I said, well, there's a reason you're an architect and you're not building anymore. Like, I'm in this business to make money. Everything's got a line item, and as long as there's enough light coming in, I don't need to spend, twice the budget on windows just for fun. You know, there's a fine line between making the house saleable and where people want to buy them and putting in so much that you'll never get your return back. I mean, building spec is there's a pie, and you want to make that pie to appeal to as many people as possible, not just a sliver of that pie. So you try to put things in that the most amount of people in that price point will want.
And it's a great analogy because that pie has a lot of factors in it. It's not, it's, that pool to be able to hit on so many people. Price is a huge factor. Price is a
Oh, of
factor,
course.
design, construction quality. I mean, there's, readiness. I mean, there's a lot of things that factor into that. And you're trying to hit all these different markers, and put them in the same set.
Yeah, there is. I mean, it's taken, I think we have it down to two series. We have an encore series, a reserve series. Our encore series goes to about 2 million. Our reserve series goes from 2 up to 5 million. And we have different packages, and we kind of know, hey, we're going to put hardwood floors in these rooms in this package. We're going to move up a level. Well, that means the game room and the master are going to get hardwood floors, or whatever it may be. And we kind of know where those price points hit and what those buyers want. I had a buyer the other day. He's like, oh, we really want a pot filler. I was like, well, I don't, I put them in 20 years ago. You know how many people actually use them? None. Like literally you have to carry the pot 2 feet from your sink. I'm not ripping out the backsplash to run a plumbing line for something you're not going to use.
I'd be curious. It's funny that you say that because, again, just from a builder perspective, all it is another point of entry for a potential water leak because none of our
That's
clients
exactly
use
what
them
that's exactly what I told them. I tell people that about pot fillers and ice makers. So I was like, if you have an
Yes.
ice maker, you better use it. I was like, because if you just let it sit there and make ice, you will have a leak and you will have to replace hardwood. So if you have that thing, you better really like ice and you better use it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so true. Those are the two pain points I think most of us have. I mean, water is just not our friend as a builder.
No.
As one of the last questions I wanted to ask because there's so many variables. I mean, you're going to do feasibility studies, you're going to look at infill projects, but again, you touched on this with the remodel aspect, but I would imagine that even on these large scale developments, I mean, there's still unexpected cost overruns that happen. How do you, either budget for those, plan for those? How maybe depending on the length of the project, you can incorporate some of that in the future sales. I'm sure there's a balance there.
The overruns are on the horizontal or minimal because you get everything bid out before. Yeah, I mean, there are unexpected, but if you're doing a multi-million-dollar project, the overrun might be a few $100,000, and you kind of account for just a overage when you're budgeting it out. That your banker, hey, this is for unexpected line items, and you just put in a few percent or 5% or whatever of the budget.
So, on a side note, Lou, what do you do for fun?
I like to travel. I go to South Florida when I can get away, or Northern California, or I don't know, Santa Barbara area. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
Northern California, but
it's kind of mid California.
Mid California. Yeah. I'd like to get away more, but this year's been last 12 months has been pretty challenging. But the more staff we put in place, we added an operations manager last year, and that's really helped take a load off my day to day. I think as you scale, your costs, you don't want to add them all at once. And I've told people that are getting new in the business, I was like, if you're building 5 or 6 houses a year, that's very manageable. That's very easy. If you're building 50 houses a year, you can scale with staff and it's not that bad. The worst builder to be is a builder building to 20, 25 homes a year. That for me, that was the worst period because you don't have enough volume to really have the staff you want to have, and there's more things than you have the time to do. So being a mid-sized builder, I think, is kind of the hardest growing pain to be in because you don't have all the staff you need for everything on a daily basis. But once you're able to scale and get to that, 50 to $100 million of revenue, I think it's like almost running any other business. It's fairly manageable.
It's such great perspective, Lou, because if you have the revenue, you can have the staff, you can actually hire good staff, you can create systems and operations. If it's small, you could probably self-perform, one man band, most of that stuff, especially not having a client on the end of it. But, it's funny because, I'm a big sports fan. I believe you are too. And so when you think about
Yeah.
sports, like these teams that, well, I mean, some of them have really bad management, but if you're picking early in the draft, you have, NFL, for example, you have a chance to rebuild, get some good talent and move up. If you're late in the round, you probably have a good team. So you're kind of handpicking maybe a couple positions you need. The ones that are always in that middle ground all the time, you're never getting a good quarterback,
No,
you're
right.
never getting a top player,
Right.
and you're just in this perennial like mediocrity, which is kind of the same thing. You can never get out of jail per se. It happens in the NBA as well all the time.
No, I mean, I think if I was going back, if you want to talk about profitability, pure profitability, if 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 I didn't want to scale, I could probably build 5 or 6 spec homes a year with maybe me and one project manager, very little staff. I don't know that I'd even have to work a 40-hour week and probably still make a very, very good living. Um, I think that's very doable for, a lot of people. And it's just how hands-on do you want to be, and what do you want your average day to be? Do you want to be on job sites dealing with subs every day, or do you want to be, you know, designing, neighborhoods, or it just whatever your personal preference is.
Yeah, such great advice. I mean, Lou, you've been incredible. I again want to be gracious to your time. I'm so impressed, not only from this conversation, but what you've done in 8 years. I think it's very impressive to see the business you built. I think it's pretty rare to see people living that American dream and doing what you've done. I mean, at a large scale, it's very, very impressive.
Thanks, Brad. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. So where can our listeners find you or reach out, especially to find some of your product?
At Olerio Homes on Instagram. The company we're closing on at the end of the month is going to be Village Homes, and that's homesofcharacter.com, or I think it's on Instagram at Village Homes. We haven't taken over yet. And then our website is just oleriohomes.com. And we have all our inventory and, what's coming soon, our subdivisions, our rent product. It's all on the web.
Lou, you're incredible. Appreciate you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Brad. Thank you for everything.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.